Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Lunch with GreenTown. I'm going to continue to admit some people, but we are getting started. This is a 5-week series of talks on environmental topics of interest. GreenTown is your local environmental group. It was founded over 10 years ago. We have fun planting trees, doing bike rides, cleaning creeks. We also have a summer internship program. We enjoy working with the next generation, like Ethan and Athena. Hello. We also take an interest in policy issues, and we'll advocate for things like the REACH codes. That's what we did last year. Switching from fossil fuels is a priority for us. These talks take 1 hour with time for questions. Use the chat feature to ask your questions. And like I said, the talks are being recorded and will be posted on the GreenTown YouTube channel one of these days, sooner rather than later, I hope. A big thank you to the Los Altos Parks and Recreation Department. They helped get the series, they've helped host the series and got it started. And then another big shout out to the Sereno Group. They provided the funds for our outreach with a grant from their 1% for Good Climate and Culture Fund. Thank you. Now, let's begin. Alison, I met her. She's on the Mountain View City Council, first of all, and she's obviously very busy. And thank you so much for doing this, Alison. I met her when she gave a talk for Canopy. That's the tree planting group headquartered in Palo Alto. And she talked about the benefits of trees to the urban environment and the landscape. She's going to expand on that today and talk more about the benefits of good urban design. And I'm looking forward to it. And so on that note, I will hand it over to Alison, and if you want to do this, she's a co-host, so she can take on the screen share right now and start the program.
Okay, thank you, Gary. I'm very excited to be here. Let me start sharing my screen. There it is. Okay. So I assume, like I said, thank you all for being here. I'm very excited. This photo that I assume you see now is, if you haven't gotten out and about lately, this is downtown Mountain View, a couple of blocks from my house where I am right now. Before I was on City Council, I worked on projects including affordable housing, downtown redevelopment, current planning, and historic preservation. I have a passion for urban design and believe it's one of the most important things we can do to make the world a better place. I want to share that passion with you today so that you can become an effective advocate for great, sustainable, and human-focused urban design. Okay. I'm starting off with a picture of a phone. I've worked in planning for roughly 30 years now, both in Santa Clara County and in the East Bay. And increasingly, I've seen the concept of urban design sidelined. When I moved to Silicon Valley, I noticed design talked about as frivolous, unimportant, or mere aesthetics. And this in a place where UX, UI, and screen design are considered extremely important. So I was surprised. I believe we need to give design of our public places as much thought as we give design of our screens. And I believe that human health and well-being depend on that now more than ever. People are spending more and more time on screen, like we are right now, with remote work and remote schools. As a planner and city council member, I believe we need to design real places that are more compelling than our screens. This presentation then of the user experience, or UX, of our cities. We'll visit urban places in Silicon Valley and a few around the US and see what divides the better from the worse, and the places we love from the places that we don't love so much. But first, let's talk a little about what urban design is and where it came from. Around 1900, modern urban design, so more than 100 years ago, modern urban design emerged from theories on how to mitigate the ills of growing industry. I love photos from this time. And you can see these are from a couple places in the US and then also in Turkey, which happens to be in both Europe and Asia. So we have 3 continents here. You know, I love photos from this time. People, you'll see people, mostly immigrants, in our streets. You know, this was before cars. So people inhabited the streets. Cities were expanding tremendously, and private business dictated the pace and style of development. This impacted especially the urban poor, and there were big public health concerns. People wanted government to provide city residents, especially factory workers, with healthier environments. And early design ideas were largely about urban park systems, sidewalks, and the health benefits of urban greening. In 1956, the term urban design was first used at a conference hosted by Harvard, introducing its new urban design program. The program promoted a growing cadre of urban design thinkers, many of whom are still central to design thinking today, like Jane Jacobs and Christopher Alexander, who maybe you've heard of. Today, urban design work is multidisciplinary and includes many concepts that are likely familiar to you, like placemaking, walkability, and new urbanism. So again, like in the 1900s, our world is experiencing rapid urban development. This is a fairly typical newish development next to the South San Francisco BART Station. I've passed it many times, but it could be anywhere in the Bay Area, I think. And according to the USDA Forest Service, cities in the US covered 2.5% of our land area in 1990, yet are projected to reach over 8% by 2050. In other words, the amount of land covered by urban development will more than triple. This is an area greater than that of Montana, Vermont, and New Hampshire together. Clearly, how we design development of our cities is extremely important. It's no small subject. Over 80% of people in the US live in urban areas. So the vast majority of us, and that number is expected to rise. We can design our urban spaces either well or poorly. And for me, I don't know about you, but for me, this development is much better than the one we were just at. Given the astounding amount of the Earth's surface that we're devoting to cities, the quality of that development is extremely important to human health and well-being, as well as to the health of our environment. This is a rendering of a development proposed for Mountain View's North Bayshore area, an area that's changed continually, from habitation by Indian villagers to ranches and farming to an office park surrounded by massive amounts of surface parking, and is now slated for redevelopment by Google. This would be development like you see here, with a mix of housing, ground floor retail and restaurants, offices, bike and pedestrian paths, places for events, and to bring back the habitat that existed during the time of the Ohlone tribes. I hope it can become a model for good urban design that can transform some of our other mundane office parks in Silicon Valley. Now, I'm going to break why urban design is important into 2 parts. First is the environment, and the second, human health and well-being. So this slide now is for our environment. I find this graphic called the donut to be very helpful. It's been used by the United Nations and adopted by some cities as the starting point for all city public policy decisions. It shows 9 environmental elements we need to address. I want to use it now to focus on the fact that in Mountain View, and I think in a lot of other cities, We talk a lot about how we can address climate change, and rightly so, but there are other environmental elements in crisis that we can address with good urban design as well. And in particular, I want you to look at, so you can see the red shows where we're passing environmental ceilings in an unhealthy way. Climate change is passed, but the other one I want to look at is biodiversity loss, which since we're urbanizing, we're changing more and more of our land use to urban and agricultural use. Agricultural use using a lot of pesticides actually it becomes a very inhospitable place for small creatures, and our urban spaces are becoming increasingly important for those smaller creatures that we depend on. So I'm going to use the metro, the housing development you see here. It's one that I pass frequently, and it's a housing development literally within arm's reach of Highway 680 in Fremont, as my first example of environmentally not quite so friendly development. It's certainly, so this here is the streetscaping in the metro development. Now it's responding to housing needs, but you can see large expanses of concrete or impermeable paving that lead to a plethora of urban problems. For example, our water quality depends on our water being able to percolate through the earth or planting material in order to clean that water. Overpaving is also a poor choice given the expected extreme storms. You know how storms will have alternating droughts and storms with flooding. We need more permeable spaces and landscaping for the water to permeate through. And also, if this area is an area that will be affected by sea level rise, it's nice to mitigate that with more planting area as well. The paving also increases to a serious urban heat island effect, where sun reflects off paved surfaces that are not broken up by shade, and that can make the places we live much hotter, and then people turn on air conditioning and we follow a vicious cycle. This development is huge and very auto-oriented, despite the fact that it's near a BART station. It just goes on and on like this. And it has no bike paths. It does have a clubhouse and a little bit of retail, but not a lot of neighborhood retail, and very dreary streets that honestly discourage rather than encourage walking. I was going to go back. You may ask, given the fact that we need more housing, what could they have done better? Well, one thing is, if they'd just gone up a couple more stories, there's literally nothing around here except for office buildings. If they'd gone up a few more stories, if they'd become a little denser, they would have had the space to put, trees between the freeway and the housing, and for larger setbacks for bike paths, for wider sidewalks, maybe a little more neighborhood serving retail. A little height can go a long way in a place like this. And of course, the architecture could be more varied and compelling. And I'll show some examples of that in some upcoming slides. So besides the environment, the second reason urban design is important is to address human health and well-being. Clearly, we're now experiencing a health crisis, but there were multiple indicators of a health crisis even before COVID. In 2014, after a half-century of steady progress, life expectancy started to drop for Americans. Drug overdoses, suicides, alcohol-related illness, and obesity are the 4 largest culprits. With COVID, life expectancy has dropped by over a year just in 2020, and is 3 to 4 times that for Black and Latinx populations. Our other most serious health problems involve sedentary living. Our lives, even children's lives, are increasingly online and indoors. Growing car use means fewer people walk to school or work or for errands. Over the last 30 years, adult obesity has doubled in the US, and childhood obesity has more than tripled. 3 of the 4 health problems I mentioned are mental health related problems. Health insurance data shows major depression is rising among Americans of all ages, but rising fastest among teens and young adults. And we've seen, at least in Mountain View, and I've heard other cities, we've seen an increase in depression and suicide since COVID has forced many of us to into even more isolating situations. On an up note, though, this is Bagby Street in Houston that was redesigned from a really barren concrete and auto-oriented street to just blocks and blocks and blocks that run through downtown Houston. Each block is treated somewhat differently, making it interesting to walk on. It has permeable paving and landscaping that encourages biodiversity, habitat for small creatures. Small creatures, I'm talking bugs, butterflies, birds, and shade and water percolation, and then trees that filter and clean the air. So happily, a growing body of research shows that nature in urban spaces addresses precisely the health problems that plague us the most. This, by the way, is my neighborhood. It's across the street from me, and those are my neighbors who, since they're homeschooling their children now, they take a lot of walks outside. The sidewalks are their neighborhood park. Anyway, thousands of studies across recent decades reveal how nearby nature improves human health, wellness, and productivity. Green spaces make people feel calmer and happier. Shade provided by trees reduces the heat island effect. Trees filter car fumes and other toxins from the air. People living near trees and greenery show clear health benefits. They go outdoors more often and walk and bike, and when they go out, they choose to stay out longer. Nature on our streets has become increasingly important for surviving and thriving during the pandemic. So now that we're back now in the Google North Bay Shore area, and this is how they intend to enhance our walkable sidewalks. So now that we've established the reasons to pay attention to good urban design, I'll introduce the key concept of spaces versus places. In short, places are sites that are memorable, context specific, with character and possibly warmth. A space is a blank slate, a physical location without character. So hopefully in the North Bay Shore, we're creating a warm and inviting place for many people, not merely a space. To understand the concept of spaces versus places, think of design of a fast food restaurant versus your favorite restaurant or cafe. Fast food outlets are purposely designed to get you in and out as fast as possible. They're designed for throughput with harsh lighting, hard surfaces, and often repelling colors. They're designed to repel you, whereas your favorite restaurant or cafe was likely designed to attract you. So your favorite hangout, and this is Eureka Restaurant, a small chain that prides itself for its warm atmospherics, and this is its location in downtown Mountain View. Your favorite hangout is more likely to be designed with warm, low lighting, attractive colors, comfortable seating, and intriguing details. Similar principles apply to urban design. Think of places you've gone during the week, if you've been off screen during the week. Places with retail, restaurants, housing, offices, transit. Were they designed to get you in and out of there quickly or to linger? Over the past 75 years, more and more of our urban environment has been designed as spaces That is to get us in and out rather than places or destinations, public places we want to or even can spend time in. Now, I'm not saying we're going to design all of our urban environment as human-centered places, but continued erosion of our public places and ignorance about their importance leads to serious environmental problems, as well as physical and mental health problems. We, however, have the power to design places and not merely settle for faceless spaces. For many, if not most cities, streetscapes, that is the streets, sidewalks, and landscaping strips, make up about 30% of the land area. I was astounded when I heard that. That's maybe a third of your city is something that you, as a member of the public, own. Parks are often another 20%. So you may own, as a voter, half of your city. And you zone the rest. This photo shows a forested walkway in Buffalo, New York, redesigned by Scape Studios, a studio that I really admire. Now you can see it from above. And I think you can't really tell when you're walking through it, what you're walking through. This walkway was carved out of a vast expanse of surface parking lots and unengaging buildings on the Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus. So remember, you have the power to design. You either own it or you zone it. So back to the definition of urban design, note the importance of public places, streets, plazas, parks, and public infrastructure, building facades and adjacent gardens. I'm going to end this talk with examples of design, some better than others, on public infrastructure. And in this case, on BART and train stations. So I assume most of you have heard of transit-oriented development, which is denser development, usually of housing and often of commercial uses as well, near transit stations, with the aim of getting people to reduce car use and increase other modes like walking, biking, and mass transit use. This photo again is the transit-oriented development near the South San Francisco BART station. I'd call it transit-oriented development 1.0. Most of these developments simply plunk medium density apartments or townhomes on streets adjacent to transit stations with little or no thought as to how they relate to the street, inadequate setbacks for sidewalks to buffer pedestrians from the street, perfunctory landscaping, no permeable paving, no public places or few for community building, and almost nowhere to go except the BART or train station. Most of the people in these buildings, living in these buildings, I mean, these are houses that you're living in. Most of them will own cars and use them to go almost everywhere except the BART station. Contrast that with what I'd call transit-oriented development 2.0. This is a rendering of the Waymark in Walnut Creek, a mixed-use development with almost 600 apartments and thousands of square feet of retail on 16 acres of what had been the BART station's surface parking lot. The Walnut Creek Transit Village will be one of the biggest mixed-use housing developments centered around a BART station. One goal is to consciously increase bike and pedestrian access to BART and to improve access to connected bus routes. But also the people living here will have places to go. They can walk to multiple places and have multiple choices, just a few blocks from their housing. Another example of transit-oriented development 2.0 is Oakland's Lake Merritt Transit-Oriented Development, or TOD, I'll be saying TOD. Notice the large pedestrian plaza designed for pop-up events like food trucks that enable the growth of very small businesses, the tree-lined streets, the human-focused crosswalk that allows everybody to cross at once and prioritizes people over cars, the street murals, and building carve-outs On the first and second floor of, you see the what is it, a 5 or 6, 7-story building in the foreground that allows more room for pedestrians, even though, you know, they're not making more land in downtown Oakland. So it's a great way to make wider sidewalks. Oakland is also known for a well-developed historic preservation program, along with world-class modern architecture. I used to work for the city of Oakland. You can see some older buildings in the background, and they have plenty more of those. So they don't make it a choice between, you know, the old and the new. They mix both. Here's another rendering of the Lake Merritt TOD. Notice the pedestrian plazas, the intimate night lighting at a low scale, at human scale, that puts a human scale on the street, and design hints at the ethnic history of the area in the lighting style. The Lake Merritt BART Station is by Oakland's Chinatown, and the development is by the East Bay Asian Local Development Corporation. And if traditional architecture is more your thing than modern, there's the Avalon Harrison. It's the Avalon Bay. You may be familiar with Avalon Bay because they do a lot of building in the Bay Area, but this is the Avalon Bay TOD project in Harrison, New York, a small town north of New York City. It's a mixed housing and retail development with a pedestrian plaza running through the center of it and around a train stop. The new development pays tribute to the old town adjacent to it. And the project's a partnership between Avalon Bay, the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, and the town of Harrison. And lastly, I want to remind you that not only are there new transit-oriented developments, I could have picked any number of old downtowns on the peninsula to feature here. Many of our older downtowns are fabulous transit-oriented development and treasured places. I don't know if you've been to downtown Burlingame lately, but it's just steps from the BART station. So these are downtowns, like the historic buildings in Oakland, are the rich placemaking anchors for newer development that surrounds them. They draw people to our towns as a destination in ways that newer developments often cannot. Historic preservation is not about touring famous people's homes anymore. It's about walkable destinations and rich experiences in public places. In fact, it's my dream to cut airplane use through more local travel, more local destinations, more rich and interesting places on the peninsula and across America. I hope you all encourage your cities to create walking tours of the history, public art, and open space in and around your town. The photo here features two, one in Pacific Grove and another in Monterey. I'm sure you've heard of flight shaming in Europe, known more positively as the slow travel movement, where you take a train, a bus, a bike, an electric car to explore the places around you. This movement had, even before COVID, reduced air travel significantly in many European countries at a time when air travel was expected to rise. Promoting slow travel is far easier when we have fascinating places to visit by train or electric car. So I look forward to better design in all of your cities, as well as my own. I'll close with photos of two of our great local downtowns. This is Castro in Mountain View and California Avenue in Palo Alto. Both now semi-closed and I believe open for public dining. And I hope I've given you some inspiration to advocate for fabulous urban design. I look forward to your questions. And I should say, whenever I do a talk like this, I end up with far more slides than I can put in the talk. So if you'd like, in addition to questions, we can go through some of the slides I have that are of things other than transit-oriented developments. So thank you again for your time.